Conventionally attractive humans. My name is RidersDX, and this past weekend, it was nothing but blood, sweat, and tears as I dove right into the Sonic Racing CrossWorlds beta and got very angry at a bunch of 10-year-olds, because that is the whole experience of a kart racing competitive world, is to get angry at children as a dirty old man. And boy, did I do that, because damn, was there a lot of bullshit races that I had to endure during my time playing this beta. But that's besides the point. Sonic Racing CrossWorlds had its very short run beta test this past weekend, and honestly, I'm going through withdrawals. I need more of that negative energy to surround my aura, to fill the landscapes. I need to be screaming, I need to be pounding, I need to be smashing up furniture mentally. Like, just dang, I just I need it to come back ASAP. But Sonic Racing CrossWorlds, yes, it had a 2-day beta test this past weekend. I was lucky enough and blessed enough to get into the test along with a bunch of my friends as well. I actually was looking forward to playing this game with a bunch of my friends, but that option was unfortunately not there when I entered the beta, which makes sense, I guess. It would have been nice if it was there, but I understand that the main purpose of this beta was to test the online connectivity and also just get some feedback about the game in general. And you wouldn't necessarily have to have the option to play with friends to do that. It would have been nice, but I totally understand. But with Sonic Racing CrossWorlds, I'm first going to just give my overall impression of what I thought about the game and my experience with playing it, and then I'm going to give you all 3 things that I think this game really needs to work on before it comes out. Because from playing this game especially, while it is a beta, it feels pretty finished. Like, it feels like they could put this out now if they wanted to. There just would be some obvious issues that they need to iron out, and I think that it's really smart of them this time to put out a beta test, because I'm pretty sure they did not do this for Team Sonic Racing, and that's a game I also think would have really benefited from a beta test because that game had a lot of wonky things happen when you first started playing it upon release, and I'll be honest, I did notice some similar things happening here, but that's why this is a beta test, and that's why it is not out yet. We cannot judge it as a full-blown game yet because it is not a full-blown game yet. It is literally in beta, and I gotta give Sega and Sonic Team credit for really doing this, because not only was it such a great opportunity to be able to play this game early and get our first real exposure to it, but it also is a great opportunity for them to learn and to see what people are resonating with and what people find to be legitimate criticisms of this game. And so, if you all couldn't really tell though, I quite enjoyed my experience with Sonic Racing CrossWorlds. I really enjoyed it, and yes, I'm going to continue being the happy-go-lucky, positive Sonic fan for the time being until they mess up once again. But I have to say, my experience with Sonic Racing CrossWorlds was really, really positive. I really enjoyed myself. Team Sonic Racing is a pretty special game to me, even though in reality it really wasn't that big of a deal and actually was a bit of a disappointment. For me personally, it was a game that holds a lot of sentimental value to me because it is the first Sonic game that I covered intensely for this channel. I remember when RidersDX was first starting to really rise was when I covered the Sonic movie, but before I covered the Sonic movie, I was talking about Team Sonic Racing. That was kind of where my first Sonic videos came from, and so it was also the first Sonic game I ever got a review code for. So there's just a lot of like things for me here when it comes to Team Sonic Racing that I'm seeing with Sonic Racing CrossWorlds, and it's making me feel like, wow, this is a good reminder of the good old days, I guess you could say. But with Sonic Racing CrossWorlds, it feels infinitely better and more engaging than Team Sonic Racing in every single way. I mean, the gameplay itself is really not that different from Team Sonic Racing. It's pretty much the same mechanics, except this time they brought back the transform mechanic, obviously, and they had the whole CrossRoads gimmick that they're implementing over here, but everything just feels so much more fun. It feels so much smoother and feels so much more fun, and it feels like a game I could play for hours and hours, which is not what I could say for a Team Sonic Racing. With Team Sonic Racing, I felt like I was playing it for a while because, well, I was motivated by the fact that I got a review code. There was also this really long, drawn-out story mode that I was playing through, but with Sonic Racing CrossRoads, at least with this beta, none of that was there. None of those incentives. All that was there was just a single mode and the ability to play through the same 6 tracks over and over again again without even being able to choose which track it is, just playing with a bunch of people for a whole weekend. And I could have seen myself doing this for like days or even weeks because I just found the gameplay to be that engaging, like that fun. And it's really hard to pinpoint exactly what it is I loved about it, but it just feels slicker, it feels smoother. I have a lot of fun drifting in particular, you know, trying to figure out the most optimal ways to maximize the amount of drift and to maximize my boost. That's something that I found really fun to really get better at. And that's just something that's so important when it comes to a competitive racing game, is being able to actually like optimize your strategy, optimize your routes, and really improve upon yourself to get better at the game and to rank higher. And I can't lie, like, you know, seeing myself beat a bunch of people with like double my ratings was very satisfying when that did happen. It didn't happen that often, but it did happen sometimes. And so a race being won felt very rewarding, and that's something that I am really digging about this game. I think this mechanic is so much more engaging than the team gameplay was in Team Sonic Racing, and I think overall there's a lot of great things to love about this. Also, the game looks absolutely gorgeous. It runs at a pretty slick 60 FPS as far as I can tell on the PS5, and the tracks look absolutely gorgeous. Ocean View is back, but I don't even really mind that's back because the CrossWorlds thing makes it different from the original game anyway, and also the track looks more gorgeous than ever. We also got a bunch of new tracks at the same time. I mean, I really like the East Stadium. The Wonder Museum for some reason has really been to my liking. Like, I really love that museum, especially the music behind it. Water Palace, I'm going to tell myself, is a Sonic Rush nod, even though it looks like a completely brand new track. The Rainbow Garden is very pretty as well. And Meadow Harbor, how can I forget Meadow Harbor? Meadow Harbor is such a great sight to see over here. As a big Sonic Adventure 2 fan, I'm so glad that they pulled from that. It's a very reasonable and sensible reference, and it looks absolutely amazing here. And the remixed track of Meadow Harbor, I mean, come on, there's just not much else I can really say about it. Like, all the tracks are gorgeous. All the crossroads that you can go to as well are really great as well. This is where you saw some of the older choices come back, like Roulette Road and Sky Road and such. But nonetheless, still really great to see all these tracks over here, and it really increases the variety of the game. And I don't know, man, I really had a great time with this beta test, and I think there's such a great foundation for a great racing game here. And as I stated in my previous video on Sonic Racing CrossWorlds, I really hope they plan on supporting this game for a long time. But now I feel that way even more because there is a great foundation here, and this is a game I can see myself playing for a while, as long as they keep updating it and giving us more things to do. So yeah, I gotta say, I'm really jazzed about this game, and I want to play more of it. Come on, Sega, when is it gonna come out, or when are we gonna get another network test? I need it. I need this now. But as I stated before, there are 3 things I think need to be addressed before the full game comes out, and so here's what they are. Number 1, the biggest thing I ran into personally was definitely the network issues. Now, it's absolutely no surprise there were network issues with this. I mean, it is a beta test after all, so there's a lot of things that need to be stabilized and worked on, and that's what a network test is for. It's to be able to identify those issues and fix them. But I gotta say, I was a little concerned with how many times I was having connectivity issues with this game, because it is only on the PS5, so we're not even taking crossplay into account. And also, a lot of times we were in matches with like bots, at least in the beginning of it. So I remember my first few matches, there was like 6 real people in there, but then there were 6 bots. And even in these scenarios, there were still times where I was being kicked out of the network. And so I just think that it reminds me a lot of what happened in Team Sonic Racing's online, because when I would try to play online with that, especially live on stream, there were multiple points where it would just kick me out, and that's not an optimal online experience, especially considering the fact that there are so many online games out there nowadays that have very strong internet connections. I mean, I've been playing Marvel Rivals, for instance, every week, and I haven't had any network issues with that game. And that game usually has 12 players in it. So there's a lot of things here. Now, granted, a racing game is pretty chaotic, so there's a lot of things to keep track of here, and that's something I'm going to talk about in the next point here. But still, network issues are definitely something that needs to be focused on after this network test, and I'm hoping that it's a lot more stable come the game's official release, especially considering the fact that we are going to have crossplay, so that's just going to make things even more unstable. Number 2 though, and this is the thing I've been seeing all across the board that everyone is mentioning, but it's being mentioned for good reason, and that is the item balancing. This game, when you watch footage of it, looks absolutely insane. Like, it's by far the most chaotic kart racer I think I've ever played, and I'm being totally totally serious about that because it feels like it's a little out of your control. Like it feels like you don't know what's going on a lot of times and you're trying your best to just get a handle on things and move forward. And a big reason for this is just the item bounce. There's so many items placed throughout all the tracks, and these items are not just simple things like getting rings or like having shields or whatever. A lot of them are very aggressive, antagonistic items, and you get hit with items pretty much every 5 or 10 seconds if you're anything past 10th place. So it's definitely very like overly stimulating. There's so much going on in this game, and honestly, I had to take breaks while playing this game because there's just so much going on and it was sensory overload. And listen, I'm 30 years old now. I don't have the brain of a kid anymore that can handle all the stimuli. You know, I need breaks. You know, my brain's getting old. So I think that the item bounce definitely needs to be adjusted. There needs to be like, I don't know, less items maybe, or just, you know, if we're gonna keep the same amount of items, you know, maybe have some of the less powerful items be more common and having some of the more like powerful items be a little bit less common. I think there just has to be some sort of adjustment here because otherwise the racing mechanic, like I said, is so much fun, but it's hard to really experience that racing if you're being bombarded by items all the time. And I can't count to you how many times I was literally at the front of the race and I would get bombarded by like 3 items and I would go from like first to like 8th place. Like it's absolutely disheartening and absolutely crappy, and I'm just like, there has to be a better sense of balance here. I think it's one thing if I lost and it felt like it was still with my control, but my losses here feel completely outside my control. And so I just think that the item balancing definitely needs to be adjusted, but that's easy. That's easy, small tomatoes, and they can definitely do that. And that is definitely by far the biggest criticism I've been hearing about this game so far. So I can see that definitely being fixed. But then the final thing is the game just needs a little more polish. I mean, I mentioned before when I was playing Team Sonic Racing, there'll be a lot of times where I felt like the game was just really buggy and would just kind of get out of, you know, out of itself, if that makes sense. There were times where I was literally defying gravity and my car was in the air and I just would have no idea where it was going. The game would try to bring me back to the original race. You know, sometimes Omochao would come up as a message and be like, warping you closer to the player so that you can catch up. And half of the time, this didn't even work. Like the game was, I was stuck in some kind of void in the game and the game couldn't bring me back. Other times it could, but other times it could not. So that's just something that is coming up, and I feel like that's something I ran into a lot in Team Sonic Racing as well. But the nice thing is that this is a network test, so they have time to iron this out. And I think that because of how chaotic the gameplay is, especially of all the items in particular, there's just a lot of things that the game has to keep track of and keep stable. And maybe if they do lessen the impact the items have, then maybe that can help to keep things more in control. I'm not a game designer by any means, so I definitely do not know what I'm talking about. Maybe I sound like I do, but I definitely do not. So it's just like, there's just some polishing that the game still needs to have, and I have more than enough confidence that Sega and Sonic Team have what it takes to do that, because like I said, this game is coming to be a real treat to me. I think that as someone who's held on to Sonic Riders as his favorite Sonic racing game of all time, this is definitely coming up there and it could definitely overtake that for me. And that's overcoming not just like the objective standpoint, and I think objectively that this game is going to be better than Sonic Riders, but it may also overcome like my subjective standpoint, because Sonic Riders is a game I have a lot of memory and fondness for, but mechanically this game just feels so solid, and I have a lot of confidence that this game is going to turn out the way that it's supposed to. So I'm really happy overall with what I'm seeing here, and I'm so glad to see a Sonic racing game that I am legitimately like really super stoked about. I am really curious though as to how the extreme gear is going to be incorporated over here, because the racing itself feels so chaotic and feels so all over the place. I don't know if they can really incorporate an extreme gear like mechanic into this beyond just a aesthetic. But from what I've heard in my comments, my previous video, it is like a separate vehicle that you can select over here. So maybe there will be some separate mechanics with the extreme gear that you can use here. We will have to see how it turns out. It would be so cool if you can race through this game using different controls with the extreme gear, but I don't know. We will just have to see how that all pans out once the time comes. But all right, y'all, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. What did you all think about Sonic Racing CrossWorlds if you got a chance to play it? If you didn't get a chance to play it, what do you think about everything you've been seeing so far? And be sure to subscribe to RidersDX to stay up to date on more Sonic Racing CrossWorlds discussions and all that jazz. But all right, y'all, thank you so much. This is Riders, riding out.